Hey guys, what is up? This is Matthew Davis, me once again. Welcome back to another movie review. Continuing on with my Halloween horror movie marathon, as well as my continuation of reviewing a specific franchise. This is going to be my review for Evil Dead 2, or Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn. It doesn't say Dead by Dawn when the title screen appears, but that's what it's called. That's what most people say. That's what I say. So yeah, but anyways, Evil Dead 2, the sequel that takes place, well, it sort of takes place after the original film. If you saw in the last movie, something like zoomed into Ash right in his face and then it just cuts to black. But before all that is answered, it starts off, okay, spoilers by the way, where it creates a specific death from the first movie. Basically, this is a sequel, but some people consider it a remake as well. Like, I mean, it does take place directly after the events of the first movie, though there are times where it recreates some certain parts, like the woods scene with the woman and stuff like that, and how the demons are basically just as insane as they were in the first movie. So basically, Ash is still in the woods and goes back inside the cabin, and more crazy stuff happens in the movie as he starts off alone, and when strangers come in, things start getting more insane as demons come and completely terrorize Ash, making him seemingly defenseless, though he has a shotgun and a chainsaw, though he doesn't fully use that until, of course, the last act. Of course, this movie has so many iconic scenes that people refer to this as one of the greatest horror sequels of all time, and I agree. This is actually one of my favorite horror films of all time, and this is truly how the Evil Dead franchise became so iconic. Because, Ash had to chainsaw his hand because it was possessed, and of course, he becomes the absolute badass that we all knew and loved much later down the line. I really love how in the start of the franchise, he started off as the titular character that tries to survive the end, and throughout the beginning of the film, he is really terrified. Like, he doesn't know, like, he's struggling a lot, and he's just screaming a lot, and he just feels absolutely petrified throughout the beginning of the movie. But things change much later on as he learns not to be scared, and he then chooses to fight his way through all this because he's just had enough. And when this group of strangers come in, at first, they seem to think that he's an absolute psychopath because throughout the beginning, he does seem like a psychopath. I mean, there's the iconic part where all the objects, including this deer head, start laughing, and then he starts laughing with them. It's insane, and it's done with some of the most impressive effects in any horror film released in the 80s. Now, they do seem a bit dated by today's standards, but back then, they looked great. I mean, there are times where when a demon is floating, you can see the string, and some of the blood, like when there's like geysers of blood, some of them do look pretty fake, like the one geyser of blood during the basement where all of it comes out, but it's very watery. But that can be forgiven, as the gore is mostly outrageous, and it's not supposed to look fully realistic. Hell, there are some parts of the movie where when a demon is getting brutally murdered, some of it is green, some of it is blue, some of it is black. Sam Raimi just had a very creative mind to make it not taken so seriously, and it's not supposed to be taken seriously. It's supposed to be a fun, cabin in the woods type horror movie with a lot of comedic elements and a lot of crazy effects. I mean, it just screams 80s horror with its combination of comedy at the same time. It had so much going for it. And with a bigger budget too, it had more effects that it managed to pull off. And though, like I mentioned before, it is a bit dated, the effects, I think, at least for the demons and the makeup effects, look great. When Ash's hand just turns like completely, demonic, and then he's like on the floor, and then the demon hand just like acts like he's just one specific creature, and when Ash chainsaws the hand, it looks really cool, and it's very impressive still to this day. And the puppetry effects too, like for the deer head, all of it looks cool. I mean, there's just so much that the movie is going for that definitely separates it apart from the first movie. Sometimes it does feel like it is trying to remake the original, but it's not really a remake. I mean, it's Evil Dead 2. I consider it a sequel. I mean, you got the same guy from the first movie and you got the same director, so I don't really consider it a remake. If people consider it a remake, I would say it's more of an updated version of the first movie. It does recreate some of those scenes, but adding a boost of more effects and more crazy stuff going on in the movie. And it's one that I enjoy watching just as much as the first film. Oh, and after I watched the movie, I was just like, okay, so when it got to the final act, when it got to like the very last part of the movie where Ash is like set in medieval time, and when the movie just closed, people were just going like, what? That's it? I'm going to be completely honest. I did not even know there was a third movie because there was no movie titled Evil Dead 3. I did not know that there was a movie called Army of Darkness, which basically was Evil Dead 3. So I was completely confused until I found out that there was another movie. So the ending can absolutely be forgiving because it's not the last time we see Ash, because it really isn't. Even the third movie was not the last time we saw Ash. And good, because I did not want Ash to go forever. Though he is saying that he's retiring the character, which is a real shame, though there is talk still of another movie, so hopefully that won't suck. But in the end, guys, Evil Dead 2, to this day, I still think is such a fun watch. It never goes too serious. It's a goofy, silly horror comedy that definitely manages to bring both fun and unique effects at the same time. With a much higher budget and more that the movie's going for, it starts off very silly and then it gets much sillier later down the line, but then it gets more badass when it gets to that very last act. It's an iconic horror film that everybody should watch. And you don't really need to watch the first movie in order to understand, because it's pretty much the same thing, just with a fresh new coat of paint and a little bit more steroids put in too, because Ash is fully showing himself here in this movie, which he didn't a whole lot in the first one, but he was still great in the first movie, and he's even better in this one. It's a masterpiece, and it's by far my favorite film Sam Raimi has made. And it's super rewatchable to this day, just like the first one, and I highly recommend giving it a watch. It's one of my all-time favorite horror films, and it's one that every horror fan should watch at least once. And hell, maybe even more than once, because I watched it more than once, and I still have a blast with it. And it is still what I consider to be one of the grooviest sequels ever. Of course, I'm going to be continuing on with Army of Darkness and the remake, so look forward to that. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Ward out.